But above all, we must thank those parents who took the senseless tragedies that befell their families and turned their pain into a legacy that will benefit so many children. They have conducted themselves with dignity and grace, and many sit today in the gallery to see the results of their courage. The Prime Minister's about turn tells many stories, Madam Deputy Speaker. If this was a man with views, his position could have been laid out at the start of the year, with the consultation used as a chance to polish the policy. As it is, officials' heads have been left spinning trying to retrofit details to this Damascene conversion. The Prime Minister likes to make a virtue of process, but he has used process in this case as a tool to avoid doing what so many in this chamber said was not only inevitable, but right and entirely necessary. We've had votes. The Prime Minister instructed his troops 3 times to vote against a ban. We've had debates. The Prime Minister wouldn't give a view. But lo, a career-critical by-election comes along, and on realising that protecting kids is not just popular but vital, the Prime Minister has finally found his voice. With Makerfield going to the polls on Thursday, Madam Deputy Speaker, perhaps we should use the next couple of days to maximum effect and try to extract his opinions on funding defence, cutting welfare, getting cheap energy, because this country has been waiting for leadership for too long. As Conservatives, we believe in the ultimate responsibility of parents over their children, but they face huge challenges in keeping their children safe online. It's not simply a matter of denying them a phone or a computer. There are many good uses of tech that children and young people should be free to explore, but the onus is on us as adults to create a positive place for their exploration. Instead, activity that would never be tolerated in the real world has been normalised, monetised and algorithmically amplified to kids' detriment. The Online Safety Act was a step forward, but we better understand now that this is not just what children see, it is how social media works. The success of this policy, however, will depend heavily on its implementation. And finally, Madam Deputy Speaker, I wish to ask the Secretary of State about her tweet last week on updating the Online Safety Act to remove illegal content with greater speed during, I quote, times of crisis. Now, the scenes in Belfast rightly appall every decent citizen in our nation. The vicious barbarism of Hadid al-Adid, just like the despicable murder of Henry Novak, has ignited anger and sparked protests that's led to indiscriminate violence against innocent people. Violence and protest can often mix, but are nonetheless 2 very different things. Laws exist that prohibit incitement, criminalise threats to kill, and stop platforms hosting illegal content, and they must rightly be enforced with strength. Peaceful protest, on the other hand, is a legitimate response to failure. In this case, perceived failure of the political class to adequately deal with concerns that the public's raised time and again via the ballot box. In such circumstances, I appreciate government has a job on its hands to make sure work to stop the spread of illegal content isn't perceived, or does not indeed become, an attempt to obscure legitimate political comment. So I ask what powers are being taken, how will times of crisis be defined, and what assurances can the Minister offer the House that she understands if government does not get its approach right, any actions she proposes risk stoking the very unrest that her policy is designed to subdue. Madam Deputy Speaker, for too long, we've implicitly decided that childhood and parenting must simply adapt to the darker manifestations of the internet as the reality of modern life. Giving parents the support they need is not the same as the state stripping them of their ultimate responsibilities. But when harm from social media to our children is real and growing, the time comes for action, even when the answers are not perfect. I look forward to working with the Secretary of State in making sure the implementation of her policy is as close to it as it can be.
I want to be really, really clear about this. The reason we are moving so swiftly on this is precisely because the bereaved families have said to us, the longer you leave change, the worse it can be for children. And I have really taken that to heart and moved as quickly as possible here. I think it was right to have the consultation, not just because there are different views, but actually what we've heard is so overwhelming. I think that builds support for the ban. It means when we implement it, I hope it will last. And I would just say, the Online Safety Act did take 8 years from, the initial idea to implementation. And we've got to, the fact that this government has taken powers in the Children's Act means we can implement it in a much quicker. And as I said, I want the vote this year, by the end of the year, and I want it coming into force as early as possible, early first couple of months of 2027. Asked finally about my comments on essentially incitement to violence online. That's what I said, put out on X last week, which is if you incite violence online, it's the same as offline. and that's not acceptable. And this week in Parliament, we are laying Ofcom's updated code of practice about what to do during crisis moments, which essentially is you've got to take that illegal material down. I think most people in this country would agree that if you break the law, incite violence, you should face the full consequences of the law, whether it's online or offline. Parents, no matter what their politics, want the same thing. So let's crack on with the job.